It was the heat of hell in Manila. 2 men, 2 warriors, 1 ring, and only one would come out standing. On October 1st, 1975, the world stopped. The setting wasn't Las Vegas, nor Madison Square Garden. It was Manila, Philippines, during the Ferdinand Marcos dictatorship. There, in suffocating heat that reached nearly 40 degrees Celsius inside the makeshift Coliseum, 2 men would enter to write the most brutal chapter in boxing history. Muhammad Ali, the world heavyweight champion, was no longer just a fighter. He was a global symbol, a voice against racism, against war, a star who transcended sport. On the other side stood Joe Frazier, his intimate enemy, the one who had broken Ali's undefeated streak years earlier, and who carried in his chest the open wound of having been publicly ridiculed by his rival. The fight wasn't just about belts, but about honor. It was a trilogy that needed to end. The first duel, in 1971, had crowned Frazier. The second, in 1974, restored Ali's glory. Now, the third would be the final tiebreaker and, as Ali himself would later say, the closest fight to death I've ever experienced. The crowd packed the gymnasium, while politicians and celebrities mingled in the stands, or sweating in the almost unbearable heat. Ali smiling, provoked as always, trying to get inside his opponent's mind. Frazier, serious-faced, masked his anger, determined to take more than just the title. He wanted to rip Ali's soul out. The bell rang, and in that moment, it wasn't just a fight. It was war. A war that would leave deep scars on the body and health of the man who proclaimed himself the greatest. And behind the glory lay a shadow few saw. The excesses outside the ring, the life of luxury that drained his energy and, little by little, eroded his health. The Thrilla in Manila wouldn't be just a fight. It would be the beginning of a heavy price that Ali would pay until the last days of his life. The bell rang, the crowd barely breathed. Ali advanced first, lightly, with that footwork that seemed to defy logic, quick, agile, as if the heat were nothing. Every step was an invitation to provocation. Every jab, a cruel reminder that he was the greatest. On the other side, Joe Frazier walked like a tank, heavy, determined, his eyes narrowed with rage. He didn't smile, didn't joke. Frazier only wanted to destroy. In the very first round, the clash was brutal. Ali unleashed swift, needle-like blows, while Frazier responded with vicious hooks, each one capable of dislocating bones. The crowd roared in frenzy, but inside the ring, there was no glamour, just 2 bodies being punished. The heat was stifling. Inside the arena, sweat poured like rain. The spotlights vibrated the air, turning the ring into a furnace. Ali began to realize that the atmosphere would not spare anyone. It felt like fighting in hell, he would later say. With every passing minute, his muscles cried out for rest, but the rivalry wouldn't allow it. Ali's jabs slammed into Frazier's face, distorting his expression. Still, Frazier wouldn't back down. He responded with hooks so heavy they echoed like thunder. The dry thud of gloves hitting ribs and jaws reverberated through the gym, and each blow seemed to shave years off both their lives. In the first few rounds, Ali seemed to dominate. He moved, talked, and jeered. "You're ugly, Smoking Joe. You'll never catch me." The crowd laughed nervously, while Frazier chewed on his anger and silently waited for his chance. This was Joe's trap to endure punishment so that, when the opening appeared, he could attack with unbridled fury. With each passing minute, Frazier's face swelled, but his hooks continued to hammer into Ali's body. Ali felt his ribs burning, but his vanity kept him standing, smiling. But the smile hid the truth. Each of Frazier's blows penetrated deeply, eroding his reserves. The audience saw 2 giants exchanging blows, but they didn't see the details. Ali's eyes were beginning to dim. His shoulders were heavy, his breathing shallow. He couldn't show weakness ever. To the world, he was invincible. To Frazier, he was just a man, flesh and blood, who could be knocked down. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The official commentator described the fight as a war. Sweat flowed in rivers, mixed with blood. The referee could barely separate the two because, when the bell sounded, they were still trying to exchange blows. By the end of the 3rd round, it was clear, this wasn't just going to be a fight. It was going to be a slow massacre, a test of who could endure the most pain. Ali looked out at the crowd, raised his arms and shouted, "Is that all you've got, Joe?" But inside, he felt his skin burning, his body giving out, and his heart warned him that this duel was just beginning. And it was at that moment that the real battle began, not between 2 boxers, but between 2 men who, in the name of glory, were willing to die in the ring. The 4th round began like a battlefield. Ali's body, still erect, was already showing signs of wet. His jabs were no longer pinpoint needles, but rather stabbing blows that cost energy. The heat turned every breath into torment. His throat burned, air was scarce, and sweat ran in rivers from his eyes. On the other side, Joe Frazier advanced like a wall. With every step he seemed closer to swallowing his rival. His left hooks slammed into Ollie's body with thunderous booms that echoed throughout the arena. The crowd reeled in shock. This wasn't just boxing, it was torture in real time. Ollie tried to keep up the pace, but Frazier, even with his face swelling with each blow, wouldn't stop. His left eye was beginning to close, the skin torn with bruises, but his determination grew with each passing second. "I'm going to rip your head off, Ollie," he growled through his teeth. It was revenge in the form of a fist. Each hook that landed on the champion's body was like a hammer blow, stealing years of his life. And still, Ali refused to back down. He smiled, mocked, said words that sounded like insults, but inside, his body screamed. In the 7th round, the crowd noticed the change. Frazier cornered Ollie against the ropes, unleashing a seemingly endless barrage of blows. Ollie's body swayed like a tree buffeted by the wind. The referee watched, alert, ready to intervene, but Ollie resisted. He protected himself as best he could, absorbed the barrage of punches, and suddenly counterattacked with unexpected fury, slamming Frazier's face with a flurry of straights that nearly dismantled him. The crowd erupted in cheers, but it was only a brief respite, a spark amid the chaos. The heat had already overcome them both. Inside the ring, oxygen seemed non-existent. Their legs weighed tons. Their arms were lead. Each round was an eternity. It was like fighting underwater, Ollie would recall years later. Yet neither of them backed down. It wasn't just a matter of victory, it was pride. It was honor. It was the fear of being remembered as the one who quit first. At ringside, the trainers shouted. The doctors watched with concern. People saw the spectacle, but didn't realize they were witnessing something greater. Two men tearing each other apart in exchange for immortality. Ollie knew this fight was stealing something from him that would never return: his health, his vitality, but retreat wasn't in his vocabulary. And now, a quick pause. If you already feel the weight of this war, imagine what it was like to live every second of it. If this story has captivated you so far, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment on what you would do in Ollie or Frazier's place. This will help bring more intense stories like this. And you'll be with me until the final round. By the end of the 8th round, Frazier's face was a map of bruises. Ollie, for his part, could barely breathe, but neither of them took a step back, and the stunned crowd began to understand. This fight would not end without leaving eternal scars. The 9th round arrived like a whirlwind. Ollie no longer possessed the same lightness. The dancer of the ring seemed bound by invisible chains. His feet dragged on the platform. His legs trembled as if every muscle screamed for help. The heat continued to crush, turning the air into an enemy as cruel as Frazier. But even nearly exhausted, Ollie didn't give in. He maintained what remained of his composure, slurring phrases through his teeth, as if refusing to admit defeat. On the other side, Frazier saw his chance. His eyes were swollen, but his fists still held dynamite. Every left hook landed as if it were his last, and every impact on Ollie's body echoed like thunder, drawing gasps of horror from the crowd. In the 10th round, Ollie leaned against the ropes. It was as if he were offering his body, but in reality he was setting his strategy. He absorbed the punches, letting Frazier expend energy, while waiting for his moment to explode. But there was a price. Joe's hooks dug into his ribs, tearing Ollie's resistance from the inside out. The champion felt his legs give out, his body momentarily numb, but he remained standing. When it seemed he could take no more, he delivered a clean right to Frazier's face, giving him breathing room. The crowd roared like a starving animal. Frazier's face was beginning to distort. His nearly closed eyes forced him to fight instinctively, to follow the sounds, the movements, the echoes of his opponent. Still, his hooks found Ollie's body, already marred with bruises. His ribs burned, his stomach churned, but Ollie clung to something greater than the pain, his promise to be eternal. It was as if he were telling the world, "You will never see me fall." In the 12th round, the scene was chilling. Frazier, nearly blind, fired punches into the void, trying to guess where Ollie was. But when he landed, the gym shook. Ollie, staggering, managed to respond with short, almost automatic jabs, as if his body were already fighting on its own, independent of his mind. It was pure survival. Every breath was a cry for help. The crowd no longer cheered euphorically. There was silence. There was tension. Everyone knew they were watching something beyond sport. Ollie was broken. His body was saying enough. but his mind refused to listen. During breaks, he could barely sit on the bench. His eyes stared blankly, as if fighting against his own conscience, which threatened to shut down. Yet, when the bell sounded, he would rise, march to the center of the ring, and face Frazier with the same pride as always. It was a duel of wills, two men in pieces, refusing to admit defeat, and it was at that point that the fight ceased to be just a boxing match. It became a spectacle of human endurance, a cruel portrait of what it means to sacrifice oneself for glory. With every second, Ali lost more than energy. Lost was his youth, lost was his health. But before the world, he showed only one thing, the soul of someone who didn't know what it meant to give up. The 13th round began like a sentence. Ali raised his arms slowly, as if challenging his own body to continue. His legs felt heavy, the air burned, but his will spoke louder. Frazier took 2 steps forward and aimed his left hook at Ali's torso, the blow that had knocked so many people down. Ali absorbed it, took a step back, too, and responded with a short, crisp, almost mechanical sequence. Jab, jab, straight. It was the mind pushing a wounded body. The ropes vibrated with each impact. The crowd roared, the referee alert for any sign of a fall. The heat turned the ring into a cauldron, and their skin glowed as if on fire. There was no breathing. There was pride. Pride kept them there, even when the light before their eyes began to flicker. Ali felt a buzzing in his temples, and for a moment, everything slowed, as if fighting underwater. Still, he pressed on, guided by the memory of every training session, every promise, every voice that called him champion. Then Ali found an angle. He pinned Frazier to the ropes and unleashed a sequence that tore through the air. Jab, straight, short cross, another straight. Joe's head whipped back, his mouthguard flew like a stone, and for a second, the world seemed to stop. Not even the screams could drown out the dry thud of the blows. Frazier tried to respond instinctively, but his nearly closed eyes couldn't see the distance. The corner shouted numbers, urging calm, demanding high guards. Ali, panting, knew this was the moment to turn the tide. He kept stinging, precise, without waste. He touched and left, until he opened space for another clean right to the chin. Frazier swayed, slipped in his own sweat, fell half a step, and got back up with the force of rage. He didn't know how to retreat, he only knew how to advance. The referee replaced the mouthguard and ordered him to continue. Ali spun on the outside, conserving breath, striking and clinching when necessary. The crowd felt the turnaround. Frazier staggered, but remained standing until the bell steady. In the 14th, Ali returned with something no one expected, cold precision. He knew he wouldn't have many more flurries, so he chose his blows like someone choosing final words. Right hands pierced Frazier's guard, who could see shadows. Joe's head was pushed back, his knees gave way, and the corner called for a clinch. Ali opened up space and landed 2 straights that sent Frazier's mouthguard flying again. The referee intervened, replaced it, and the fight continued for endless seconds. Frazier's face was swollen, his eyes nearly sealed shut. He threw hooks in the dark, guided by the sound of his rival. Ali breathed in spurts, without wasting time. A jab, a sidestep, and another straight. The bell sounded like collective relief. Frazier groped his way back to the bench, and his trainer looked deeply, heavily, as if deciding fate. Enough, he whispered. You gave it your all. Frazier tried to get up, but the hand on his shoulder held him back. No one will forget what you did. The corner lifted the towel, and the world held its breath. Ali remained seated, hunched over when he learned the fight was over. The referee raised his hand, and he barely managed to get up. He wanted to go to the center, but his legs refused. Take off the gloves, he muttered, exhausted, before raising his fist in an almost automatic gesture. The gym exploded, and yet, there was silence within him. He had one, but on the verge of collapse. Later he would say he had touched the brink of death. The feeling was already there, a metallic emptiness in his throat, his head heavy, his body crying out for help. Frazier, in the corner, was breathing through his mouth, his face destroyed, but his dignity intact. The trainer embraced him like a brother. Ali tried to smile, but no smile emerged. A tremor emerged. Glory weighed on his shoulders like an anchor, and it was impossible to deny. Each blow took its toll. The ring returned the victory, but it took something no title can bring back. In the corridor, the ice melted as it touched the skin. Outside, flashbulbs and sweets waited. Within a war, excesses began in the body. When Frazier's chant said enough, the noise wasn't a celebration. It was a heavy silence hidden beneath applause. There he sat, hunched over, his hand raised more by reflex than force. The hallway smelled of ice and metal. His chest burned, his kidneys throbbed, his vision darkened in flashes. In the locker room, they removed his gloves like a soldier undressing after battle. Frazier, his eyes nearly sealed shut, wondered if he'd lost by a hair's breadth. He wanted to go back, but there was no turning back. Ollie whispered to himself to keep breathing. The cold towel on the back of his neck offered no relief. The doctors touched his ribs, and he bit back the pain. In the mirror he saw a triumphant and exhausted face, a crowned king barely standing. Outside, flashbulbs, promises, headlines. Inside, his hands trembled, and a weariness that wouldn't go away. Winning tasted like iron. He stood slowly and thought, if this is glory, why does the body cry for help? The door opened, the world called his name. There he saw, the price would be charged in silence, and in the hours and days that followed, his body took its toll. Dull chest pains, dizziness upon rising, a fatigue that no amount of rest could cure. The doctors spoke of severe dehydration, accumulated trauma, and a risk to the nervous system. Ollie listened, but he listened as if he were already far away. His head throbbed from within, his fingers sometimes vibrated indiscriminately, and sleep came heavy, broken. The press celebrated the hero, but the toll remained on his body. Each subsequent training session reminded him of Manila, his short lungs, his slower pace, the light fading in the corners of his vision. He still shone, still won, still staged greatness, but something had been taken. The experts warned, repeated. Blows erode time, mess with memory, speech, and balance. Ollie smiled, joked, hid the pain to protect his legend, and carried on. Little by little, small tremors, lapses, difficulties articulating long sentences. None of this erases the triumph. It only reveals the price that glory exacts when the bell falls silent, and time no longer obeyed. And outside the ring, life unfolded like a parade of lights. Luxury hotels, packed suites, gleaming cars, tailored suits, contracts upon contracts. There were endless dinners, late-night interviews, cramped flights, laughter for photos when the body only wanted to sleep. There was more to him than the sport, and that demanded constant presence. Fame demands tribute, attention, energy, late nights, and sometimes prudence. His entourage grew, as did his requests, and saying no seemed to hurt the myth he had cultivated. Every party was a stage, every room an invisible arena. The excesses weren't scandalous, they were routine. Sweets, heavy meals, little sleep, long tours, calories that turned into extra weight and made training grueling. The mirror revealed a champion and a tired man. He still enchanted the world, but his body registered everything. Racing heart, complaining joints, shortness of breath climbing the steps, and Manila returned, always, like a weary ghost sitting in the corner of the ring, and Fane whispered, more, more. And Manila gave Ollie the victory and left its toll on his body. It was there that the legend touched the edge of the abyss and returned bearing invisible scars. When the lights go out and the crowd leaves, the champion is left alone, breathless, the pounding of his own heart, the weight of his own promise. The lesson is stark and simple. Limitless glory often takes its toll without warning. Courage isn't dying for applause, it's knowing when to protect what keeps us alive. Ollie forged ahead, hero and man, trying to balance the voice of the world with the voice of his body. And herein lies our hook. Outside the ring, life seemed like solid gold, but it hid cracks. In the next chapter, we'll open the doors to this. Other scenario mentions, busy schedules, habits that shine on the outside but exact a toll on the inside. You'll see how luxury mixes with excess, how myth fuels the machine, and how the silent price continues to be paid with each dawn. Stay. Let's enter the champion's home and illuminate what no one sees. See you soon.